About 2 years ago, my family got a new puppy. We got a Siberian Husky, and you might know that Huskies are pretty active and they need to go on a lot of walks, and so after we got the puppy, I started going on a lot more walks. We live about 50 yards from a cemetery, which is where we end up taking most of our walks, and so almost every day I would go around the cemetery with the puppy, and the average walk would be at least 4 laps around the cemetery, which means I would circle around these same gravestones day after day, multiple times every day. But it wasn't until about 3.5 months after starting these walks with the puppy, so after at least 600 laps around the cemetery, that I noticed something. On the back of one of the gravestones there was a plate, and it said something on it. It said, Anton Pete Schultz, Corporal, U.S. Army. And then I looked on the back of another gravestone and I had a similar plate, and this one said Alton H. Lindstedt, Private First Class, U.S. Army, Purple Heart. These were special plates that were put on the back of gravestones that belong to veterans, to mark the service of the men and women who've served our country so proudly. And I'm kind of ashamed to say that it took me 600 laps at least to even notice that they were there. And that's kind of the point of Veterans Day. Veterans Day is designed so that we do notice, so that we don't forget, the brave men and women who have given so much to our country. And as we get closer to Veterans Day, as we start approaching that this week, we're going to be looking at some stories of the service of our veterans for 2 reasons. One, because their service is worth remembering. And number 2, what we see in our veterans often reminds us of the very best things that we find also in our God. And this week we're going to be looking at a lot of characteristics about our God that we see highlighted in the service of our veterans. And today, the one that I want to highlight, the characteristic about God is this, is that we have a God who remembers you, who doesn't forget your needs, who doesn't forget your wants, who doesn't forget your pain, who doesn't forget the ways that sin loads itself on top of your heart, so you walk through life with heavy shoulders over and over again and again. And the reason we know that he doesn't forget is because God chose to write your name not on the back of a gravestone, but on something a little bit more significant. And he tells us about that in Isaiah chapter 49, where he says, See, I have engraved your name on the palms of my hands, on the palms of his hands. Our God sent a Savior who one day climbed a cross that shed his blood, that covered his hands with blood, to engrave your name, to redeem you on the palm of his hands, so that you could walk through life and know that to God, you are someone worth remembering. We have a friend of the ministry who is offering a $5,000 matching grant to help support our Time of Grace television broadcasts on the American Forces Network. This is a great way to send God's message of grace to the men and women who serve our country so faithfully. Your gift today, this means, will be worth twice as much. If you'd like to donate, just click on the link that you'll find in this post. Thank you, and God bless.